A very good morning to all the speakers and the viewers who've joined this RW Roundtable on Green Corporate PPA Market in India. We started these knowledge sharing roundtables a few months back and did 4 of such webinars on EV charging related subjects. However, we feel that green corporate PPA market has gained immense interest in the Indian scenario, driven by a variety of factors, which we will discuss later. And like any sector, there are a lot of challenges which is impeding growth here. So this webinar was basically organized to provide an understanding of the opportunities and challenges in the adoption of green corporate PPAs in India, and how can the industry and the other stakeholders work together to ensure that this market continues to grow. Now, throughout the event, since everyone except the panelists are on mute, I would request the audience to keep posting their comments or questions in the Q&A box or the chat box, so that speakers can take them up and the webinar can become more interactive. Before we start, I will introduce our panelists for today. We have with us Mr. Kushaagra Nandan from SunSource Energy, Mr. Nallasivan from TANGEDCO, Mr. Vinay Pabba from Vibrant Energy, and Mr. Guruprakash Sastry from Infosys. I'll introduce each of the panelists before we move to our discussion for today. So Mr. Nandan is co-founder and managing director, SunSource Energy. He's a solar energy enthusiast with 20 years of experience in leading large teams that have developed multiple megawatt scale solar energy projects across the world. As co-founder and managing director of SunSource Energy, one of India's leading integrated distributed solar companies, he's been instrumental in shaping the company's strategy and leading its project execution, technology, and engineering efforts to carve a niche in the global solar market. Prior to co-founding SunSource, he worked with global solar majors, including SunPower, GE, and Conti Group. He's a postgraduate in solar energy engineering from the University of Massachusetts and has a bachelor's in electrical engineering from Manipal Institute of Technology. Next, we have with us Mr. Nallasivan C, Executive Assistant Engineer, TANGEDCO. He's a power system engineer with 20 plus years of experience. He's currently working as an assistant executive engineer on open access AMR project, IT division with TANGEDCO. He's done a certified training on rooftop solar PV entrepreneur by Skill Council for Green Jobs. He worked as a system studies engineer in TNEB Chennai and worked on deputation to Tamil Nadu Energy Development Agency as deputy senior manager solar division. He's also worked as assistant engineer in operations and energy and efficiency division at Ennore Thermal Power Station. Next, we have Mr. Vinay Pabba, who is CEO of Vibrant Energy. He's a renewable energy industry veteran with a track record of having built and managed 3,000 megawatt of solar and wind assets. As former CEO and MD of Brookfield Asset Management India, he was instrumental in launching Brookfield in the renewable sector in India. He's also been an independent director on the board of KKR-backed Virescent India. Prior to Brookfield, he worked as CEO of Greenco Group, leading the project development vertical. He has experience across the entire power value chain, right from generation to transmission and distribution. Beginning his career with the Indian Revenue Service, he has a bachelor's degree in engineering from IIT Madras, PGDBM from Exeter Jamshedpur, and is a CFA. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Guruprakash Sastry, who is Regional Head Infrastructure at Infosys. Prior to Infosys, he worked with Terry and Johnson Controls. He has a bachelor's in chemical engineering from Siddha Ganga Institute of Technology and a master's degree in chemical engineering from KTH Royal Institute of Technology. He is a certified energy auditor from Bureau of Energy Efficiency and lead accredited professional from the Green Building Certificate Institute. Right, we can now move to the panel discussion, and maybe we'll start with the developer first. So in that case, Mr. Nandan, maybe if I can put the first question to you, that in your view, since you've been in this space for a long time, how have you seen this market evolve over the past few years?
Sure, it's a good question. First of all, very good morning to everyone here and my esteemed co-panelist here, and right from the experts from TANGEDCO and from Infosys, and hopefully Mr. Vinay also should be joining in very soon. So then the space has evolved and it's been evolving very on a very fast-paced manner. I still remember when we came back, spending about a decade in the US market, came back here about a decade ago, and the market was very small. Even getting 100 kilowatt project was a very big deal, right? And now nobody talks about it, even a megawatt project. So definitely the market has evolved. We are seeing now from rooftops, the market is now getting moved towards open access, and even further towards now storage and other aspects are coming along. So, and I think that the support from the government has been there in terms of opening up the regulatory aspects related to specifically open access, and with the green rules coming in, that should also open up. And what we see, some of the states have become quite leaders in pushing open access, including Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, UP, and other states are following up. I think more and more states have to learn from other states who are forward thinking, what has been their success stories. Therefore, that will open up other markets across India. So what we surely see is next decade or two are going to be for this industry, and we all have to gear up in the scale up, which is supposed to happen now. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for those introductory remarks. And before we move ahead, Mr. Vinay Kumar has also joined. Very warm welcome to you, Mr. Kumar, and thank you for joining in. And Mr. Sastry has also joined from Infosys. Warm welcome to you as well, Mr. Sastry. So now we have a good mix of developers, we have a consumer, and we also have a utility official. So it should be an interesting discussion and very wholesome from the point of view of all stakeholders. I'll move to Mr. Vinay Kumar now. Mr. Kumar, a similar question for you. You've been in the industry for a very long time, from utility scale now to CNI. So how have you seen the solar and the distributed renewable energy market evolving as a whole over the past few years? That if you can share some light on that.
Thank you, Kushbu. It's a privilege to be here on this panel and speaking on this topic. Kushaagra has covered most of it, the changing landscape of the C&I sector as we see it today. I just wanted to add a couple of points. I mean, there's a lot of optimism about the C&I sector, its growth, scaling prospects, and the sheer kind of project formats that we are looking at in the C&I sector today. It has gone beyond the 5, 10, 15 megawatt kind of scale, and now we are talking utility scale, and increasingly C&I projects, at least on the project side, are looking increasingly similar to what we have seen on the utility side. So project sizes have really gone up. Today, customers are coming to us with requirements which are very different from what it was even a couple of years back. Market is increasingly moving towards round-the-clock requirements, where we use a mix of renewables, solar, wind, and probably storage, and then meet a particular RE penetration that the customer desires. And these RE penetration levels are fairly staggering. I mean, it's either 70% or 80%, and sometimes it is even 90% of what they're signing up for has to be met by a mix of renewable energy generation sources. So the market is moving to in a direction where it's no longer plain vanilla wind or solar. It's increasingly they are hybrids, and increasingly they are hybridized with storage in some form or the other. Now, it's also the complexion has changed in the sense that increasingly we are seeing business formats where even the loads, the consumer is also willing to move to the interstate transmission system to avoid all the other regulatory challenges we have around handling the regular open access challenges that we typically know of in a state scenario, where the generator is on the ISTS, the loads are on the ISTS, and then generation sources are not co-located. We have solar in one place, wind in another place, and then you're trying to hybridize it and trying to give the customer a profile that he desires, which is fairly firm with 80-90% penetration levels. So that's the kind of change that we're seeing in the market. It means that we have to sharpen our skills, start thinking like utility players, and also handle the additional risk of handling large format projects with ISTS connectivity, which is increasingly seen to be the trend. I mean, you're seeing quite a few platforms which are funded by investors and even promoters, where entirely this has been the kind of mode of getting the initial peak of capacities or the seed capacities they want to start the platforms with. That's increasingly the trend that we are seeing, and essentially, even from a government and policy point of view, they're seeing the C&I sector as being one of the prime movers for getting to our net zero goals or the capacity goals that we set for ourselves. And it's seen in the kind of changes that they have affected on the policy front. For example, lowering the open access limit for green energy from 1 megawatt to 100 kilowatts is one such move that itself can scale the market 100x or 1000x. I mean, we really don't know what the numbers are, but the intent of the government is very clear that they see it as a prime mover for our energy transition, the C&I sector, and that they're going all out to make it easy for developers and investors to invest in scale capacity in the sector. I'll pause there. I think I have said more than my share.
That's okay. Maybe we can move to Mr. Nallasivan now. And I want to ask you a very different question since you represent Tamil Nadu and TANGEDCO. What have been some of the initiatives taken by your state in, to incentivize or to, promote distributed renewable energy? You'll have to unmute yourself, Mr. Nallasivan. Yeah.
Yes. Hi, my fellow panelists. Thank you, Kushbu, for the opportunity. So you asked me a question like, what is the initiatives done by the DISCOM to promote RE? Am I right? Exactly?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you see, Tamil Nadu is really blessed with the natural resources, both in terms of wind and solar. So altogether, the very earlier wind machine was initially developed right from 1985. Am I audible? It was right from 1985, and now the scale has really come up, and Tamil Nadu is the leading in wind energy sector. So we have almost 9,000 megawatt of wind capacity installed, connected both to the state STU and the CTU. So of this, the government of Tamil Nadu has been standing shoulder to shoulder with the government of India ministry in achieving the national target earlier, right from the national solar mission of achieving the 100 gigawatt thing. So we have almost 6,500 megawatt of captive wind generation alone on the open access sector. If you take solar, it is almost, I can say, 2,000 megawatt in the open access sector. So our fellow panelist was initiating on the green open access regulation, wherein it was the limit was got down from 1 megawatt to 100 kilowatt. So in Tamil Nadu, way back, it's almost a decade back, we have given this to our open access consumers. So any consumer, HT consumer who is connected at the level of 11, 22 or 33 kV, even with the connected load of 100 kilowatt, he is eligible for the open access. So this is how we are being promoting in our state. So this is a very good example, which now the even the central government has taken and it has come up with the green open access mechanism. In fact, it has been taken from us. I would say we are the leaders in this.
All right. Thank you for that very brief answer. If we can move to Mr. Sastry now. Mr. Sastry, if you are, yeah. I will ask you a very different question again, since you represent a consumer's point of view. What have been, Infosys initiatives in this space? I mean, do you source a lot of green power for your operations? And if yes, then if you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I hope I'm audible clearly. Maybe some people might know, Infosys is a carbon neutral company since 2020. We are carbon neutral against across all emissions, scope 1, 2, and 3, which includes the electricity that we consume and also all the business travel and employee commute related emissions. And third year in a row, we published the carbon neutrality this year for FY22 as well. So the two major things are, one is the electricity that we consume in our offices, because we are from the knowledge sector. So it's a lot of people, a huge number of employees, which means a huge number of buildings, office space. So that's the electricity consumption. And the second is the business travel and employee commute. So our approach to carbon neutrality was very, very clear. First is reduce your consumption, reduce your demand as much as possible. Second is source everything possible from renewables, source all the electricity from renewables. Then third was whatever is remaining, offset it through the carbon offset projects which have a social impact. That was our clear 3-step approach to carbon neutrality. And that's a very logical approach, I feel. And so this is where the renewables part plays a very big role. So we had taken goals on reduction of our demand, which we achieved. And we had taken goal for carbon neutrality, which we achieved. But the goal on RE that we had taken up, we haven't been able to achieve. So this is, of course, we invested in a lot of plants as well. All our rooftops, most of our building rooftops are covered with solar. We have about 20 megawatt of solar capacity within our campuses. And then we also have a 40 megawatt plant, which is a captive plant about 150 kilometers away from our Bangalore campus, which is also supplying power to us. So today, still we are at 52% RE in our overall energy mix, which is a bit of a concern. And you know, the issue has been some kind of a policy scenario which is you know, not stable in many cases. For example, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu have been very stable policy scenario. Karnataka, in fact, we are today at almost 90% on RE. Tamil Nadu 61%, 65% on RE. But you know, Maharashtra, we were also in a good position 2 years ago, until there was a change in the regulations where there was this cross subsidies coming up, gross metering coming up, open access was not viable anymore. So we had to stop all our open access. So today, if you see, most of our renewable energy comes from our own plants. We do have PPAs, a couple of PPAs, a few PPAs in Tamil Nadu, in maybe 1 or 2 in Karnataka, and in Odisha, we have green power coming in from the DISCOM itself. So this is where we are. And today, over 3/4 of our consumption, renewable consumption, is our own self-generated. And this is, I mean, the 4 locations that we are present in: Maharashtra, Telangana, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. The 4 major locations for Infosys, where which contribute for more than 85% of our electric consumption. 2 of them we need to really work on, you know, getting RE. I mean, this is the case with most of the corporates. Believe me, most of the corporates which have taken big goals on ESG, goals on carbon neutrality, we really want to get RE, but there is no way the regulations allow in some of the states, which is unfortunate.
All right. Thank you for that very good assessment. Maybe we can discuss a little bit about the challenges next, and maybe try to figure out a solution for you, Mr. Sastry. We have, you know, Mr. Nandan and Mr. Pabba. I'm sure they can definitely give you some more insights. I'll move to Mr. Nandan now. Mr. Nandan, while we talk about challenges in a bit more detail, I wanted to quickly take your, you know, insight on what has been the impact of these global supply chain disruptions and, you know, the commodity price fluctuations that are happening, also the volatility of rupee versus dollar, and, you know, especially in the solar space, the polysilicon prices. How has all of that impacted you as a developer?
I think I would say it has not only impacted developers, the whole developer, consumers, everyone across the value chain, right? And no wonder that why all the projects are stuck. A lot of the projects are stuck, not all the projects are stuck. What has happened because of COVID, the last 20 plus years, we are seeing the cost in the declining mode. And then come COVID and the cost starts going up across the raw material, right? Polysilicon was the biggest driver. Then we saw steel and other commodity prices. But for solar, the more than 50% cost is in solar panels. So they went up dramatically. And then the GST regime changed from 8.9% and then 13.8% the GST overall came in. And then from April 1st onwards, the 44% duty also kicked in. But for supporting the domestic manufacturers, which is a positive sign, but it requires a almost 2 to 3 year window till the time the thing starts stabilizing again, especially when the domestic manufacturing lines start kicking in again. So what has happened over last, should say year and a half, since this whole supply chain disruptions have started, one thing has showed that the tariffs have gone up, right, in certain states by 50, 70, 80 paisa. Initially, we all thought it's going to be a temporary thing, but now it seems like the reality is sunk in, right? Until unless the prices of modules again starts going down, which may be a possibility in the future. But currently, we all are dealing with that. But I think the good news in all this is still, even with the higher tariffs, there is a savings which up to maybe 30 to 50%, depending on which state you are in, or the end consumer can still have, even with the increased tariff, the end consumer can still have. So I think that the story is still alive. I think we have just gone through a disruption phase. Things are starting to come back. But I think the more clarity on the regulations are there, the better it is. And we all understand we are in a concurrent subject where the state governments and central governments have their own limitations, right? And the revenues also have to kick in. But I think this turmoil in policy, I think the earlier we get rid of, the better it is for the entire industry, so that the projects can keep on moving. But I think the propositions are stronger. The other thing what has also come out of this whole COVID disruption is the global multinationals are now thinking more and more harder on the net zero impact. They have formed their own sustainability teams, which are driving the green agenda. So what we are seeing is now the global the companies are, they are pushing for greening of the supply chain. So what that means is basically we are seeing now the corporates are asking for more and more of green power, and be it with solar, be it wind solar hybrid or RTC, or so there is a whole evolution. There's a whole large scale of evolutions is starting to come in this industry. So what we see is, as Mr. Vinay Pabba also mentioned, that the volumes are scaling up tremendously now. Yeah, so I think that's a very positive sign. What we see, but the challenge remains is with this whole inflation coming in, the interest rates going up, and so I think we have to be cautious. But I think overall, the positive stories out there, and as a country, I think we have a lot to do in this front, and a lot to achieve. I think the more we also see it from the other way around, that if we are able to make our industries more competitive in their tariffs, right, they save their energy, and ultimately they have their stronger balance sheets and they can expand further. So it's a win-win situation for the country. The more we expand into renewables, the better it is for our industries to expand further as well.
All right. Thank you for that, Mr. Nandan. Mr. Pabba, would you like to add anything to what Mr. Nandan just said regarding supply chain issues and whatever the impact has been of COVID? You muted, Mr. Kumar. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. It's the best of times and it's the worst of times in a way for the sector. I think from Shakespeare, I guess. So on the one side, you have a galloping demand which is escalating, and the whole business is scaling up to meet those challenges of increasing demand. And on one side, you're squeezed with this supply chain disruption, and also the additional burden of levies because of the duties and policy. I speak as a developer and not as a manufacturer, and obviously that gives us a slightly different perspective of the market. This may not be the popular thing to say, but when we decided to impose these tariffs and duties way back in March, 2 years, at least a year before the onset of COVID, the solar modules prices, the FOB price from, if you're importing these modules, was in the range of 15 to 16 cents a watt. Today, that's the price at which you get solar cells, not modules. Okay, so that is the the kind of a tectonic shift that we have had on the pricing front as far as procurement of cells and modules go. So you're able to buy modules before COVID at the same price at which you're buying cells today. And we decided in all our wisdom to impose this very stiff tariff barriers and also non-tariff barriers like your ALMM and all that, in a scenario where that was the pricing and that was the availability, and we were conscious, we did it consciously, thinking that we have to give the manufacturers space to put up capacities in India, indigenize the complete value chain. And that was the right time to do it. And when it was done, it was the right thing to do. But nobody saw COVID coming, nobody saw supply disruption coming. And we believe that it's a time for review of these policies, which were decided in a completely different context, and give the industry breathing time to adjust to the new realities in a post-COVID scenario, and more so in a market which is increasing, and we're not able to really cope with the demand given this pricing constraint that we have. So there is a clear case for going back to the drawing board and looking at these tariff barriers on a de novo basis. Similarly, the non-tariff barrier in the form of the approved list of module manufacturers that has been coming out off and on, it lapsed. I mean, the restrictions have been enlarged to include C&I customers and even rooftop customers. So virtually the entire market today for solar modules is like a walled garden with tariff and non-tariff barriers completely blocking out any kind of imports from coming in. Maybe there is a case for a breather from ALMM also, because otherwise we don't have the capacity today to meet the requirements of the Indian market, and we stand the risk of actually stalling this capacity scaling if we don't look at these restrictions and look at them with the view of giving more time for the industry to ramp up their capacities and also not affect the scale up in the interim. These are two key requirements which I see, which I wanted to put forth on the table. But these are again perspectives from a developer and not really from a manufacturer. Would probably tell you something different, and probably a customer like Guru might say something different. But that's the way I look at it as a developer, and key things that need to be addressed in the current scenario.
Right. I'll move to Mr. Sastry now. Mr. Sastry, from whatever you've heard, Mr. Nandan spoke about, I believe, 30 to 50% savings. So from the projects that you have or where you've gone ahead for corporate PPAs, what kind of savings do you get? It might vary from state to state, but if you can just, give a ballpark number.
So actually, from the PPAs that we have signed until now, they have been more or less on par with the tariff that we had in that particular location. Okay. Maybe plus or minus 5%. Mostly it is minus 5% kind of a range that we have seen. And it's also because we're on the industrial tariff in most of the locations. So that also plays a role. So in terms of savings, there may not be much, but yeah, definitely as green power, we do wish to have much more in most of the locations that we are present.
So if I can just ask a follow-up question before I move to Mr. Nallasivan, that if not savings, then what have been the key drivers for Infosys as a consumer to opt for renewables?
Yeah. So as I said, it's our goal of becoming carbon neutral and net zero emissions to the environment. We want to offset all the emissions that we generate directly or indirectly. So that was the key driver. So as long as it is on par, there's no reason not to go for renewable power, which is clean. So that was the main driver for us.
Great. Mr. Nallasivan, if I can come to you now. In terms of the various, different types of models that there are, be it captive or group captive or open access, so which sort of, project approvals, or which sort of projects do you see more in, Tamil Nadu?
I would like to thank Gaurav from Infosys for giving a thumbs up for the policies in Tamil Nadu for their Infosys on their own captive. So thank you, Gaurav. So the situation he has revealed throughout India, and the current stakes that has been taken from Maharashtra, how the environment is, what should I put it? It's not surely conducive for open access in certain states. Now, going to what you have asked, I would say that mostly since Tamil Nadu is one of the industrialized state in India, we have a lot of captive and group captive projects coming up. For example, you must be aware of, like in the city of Coimbatore, we have a lot of spinning mills. We have a spinning mills association. We have a lot of spinning industries there, and then we have automobile sector majors like Hyundai, who have their own plants, who have their own captive. So they do have their compliance on renewables. And apart from this, the Ministry MNRE has also laid strict guidelines on the renewable purchase obligation mechanism that is being strictly enforced in our state. So being corporates, they are also, they do their best in terms of acquiring power from these renewables. So through which the state of Tamil Nadu and TANGEDCO supports them to their best. So almost the majority is 80 to 85% is captive and group captive projects. And there are very few who come across with the third-party projects, third-party.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kumar, my next question for you, this is one of the questions that I always like to ask in a panel, is out of all the states that you operate in, which is the easiest state for you to, work or operate in terms of C&I sector?
Kushbu, that's a very tough thing to answer, especially when you have a DISCOM person on the panel.
Maybe
I think India. I think I'll just give you a perspective of what I genuinely feel about the question you've asked. I believe that India is not a single country as far as the electricity market goes. Okay, each state is unique and different. So land could be easy in one place and very difficult in one place. Evacuation is easy in one place, very difficult in one place. The pace of regulatory changes make one state comfortable, one state and there's also a time dimension to this. There'll be points in time, and suddenly because of policy changes, the regulator in Karnataka might make Karnataka look very attractive. It's a moving market, and in fact, I mean, in some of the tenders that we have been quoting for projects outside India, there's a requirement saying that you should have experience outside your home country. So I feel that today we are operating in 29 different countries in India. That's how the electricity market is to a developer who's setting up projects in multiple states. But yeah, and then you have the additional constraint that you have to only go to states where the resource is there. So if you're talking about wind, you are just confined to those 7 or 8 states where you have the wind resource. So you have a box which is being drawn outside this attractiveness framework that you've just mentioned. But again, if you look at the kind of capacities that are being discussed today, most of the capacities are moving towards a few states. We know all of that. It's either Rajasthan, Gujarat, Karnataka, to an extent in Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu. So I guess if you're looking at the flow of capacities to these states, I guess these are the most attractive ones. But it need not necessarily be from a point of view of policy friendliness. It's a mix of factors because of which makes these states very attractive. That's how I put it.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Nandan, my next question for you, that, in between group captive and open access, there was a trend 2-3 years back when group captive was definitely becoming more popular. Have the green open access rules somehow again, taken the demand towards open access, sort of purely open access sort of projects?
So open access, I think, Kushbu, you mean to say that captive or
third party. Yeah.
Third party. I think we are not seeing it yet. So we're seeing more on a group captive basis where 26% minimum equity is required. And from a developer perspective, also we see is a positive sign because we also see the consumer also has a skin in the game. And but we are not seeing much. Maybe Mr. Pabba can also give a reference what they are seeing, but we are not seeing that much, at least as of now.
All right,
Kushbu, I just wanted to add to that. There is a different beast in terms of what the customers have been asking. I mean, the traditional captive model is still there, and that remains the prime mover for demand from a corporate consumer point of view. But increasingly, we are seeing a demand for VPPAs, virtual PPAs, where you separate the green attribute from the brown power, and then we sell brown power either to a customer in India or sell it on the market, and then the green attribute is kept by the customer who is signing the PPA with us. So that's increasingly a demand. There is, I mean, we are still in the incipient stages of how we tweak the regulations to make it a compliant model which can meet that kind of demand. That's also a huge demand that we have, at least from the companies operating in India, which have presence abroad, and we have raised ESG funds and other such capital in European and American markets. So VPPAs, we have been told, legal experts have told us that it is strictly not compliant because it doesn't allow a contract for difference where you have the attribute somewhere and the brown market somewhere, and then so the regulations don't currently allow that kind of a thing, but we need that kind of a facilitating regulatory environment in place to make PPAs really possible in India, and that could be a big chunk of demand that could be met by SC&I developer, apart from the bread and butter, which has been the captive demand, which Guru had just spoken about. I just wanted to add that.
Right. Thank you. I think my colleague Sarthak had a question for Mr. Sastry and as well as Mr. Nallasivan. Sarthak, why don't you post your questions and then I'll come back.
Yes, thank you, Kushbu. I'll ask my question to Mr. Sastry because you mentioned that the tariff is more or less similar, the tariff that we have for green corporate PPAs and the grid tariff. So a lot of utilities now are proposing green tariffs. That is, they'll supply green electricity to the C&I consumers. So for Infosys, for a C&I consumer like you, would you prefer a green tariff bought from a utility if there's no difference in the corporate PPA tariff and a green tariff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a definite yes, because we even evaluated this in Maharashtra, but unfortunately they were actually accounting it for their RPO obligations as well. So that's the reason we could not utilize it, because we also accounted for our carbon neutrality. So ultimately it has to help us in offsetting our emissions. We don't want double counting of the benefits of clean energy. So if the utility is able to supply green power to us, that will probably be our first choice. Okay, rather than enter into a PPA and then wait for or rather look at all the evolving regulatory scenarios, all the different charges coming in at different points of time, things changing from time to time. So there's a lot of uncertainties that come with that, like what we saw in Maharashtra. So yeah, that would be our first option. I think it's also very important for utilities to understand a lot of states haven't met their RPOs, right? So that is also there. So it's in not only Infosys, a lot of corporates are definitely willing to go for green power, and through utility will be the first choice for anybody, because that we all perceive that as a less headache, or more reliable and without too much of uncertainties related to the regulatory scenarios. So yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Nallasivan, good news for you, because consumers are willing to buy green tariff from utilities. So even from TANGEDCO, there were reports that there are proposals for 150% green tariffs. So even if that is implemented, so how will utilities certify that the electricity that we're providing is green? So what kind of certification or third-party reviews will take place to provide those certificates?
Okay, so I'll put it in this way. So, since Tamil Nadu is rich in renewables, and the combination of the renewables is more than 70%, I guess, and with the monsoon plus for the last 2 years, it's completely packed entirely with the renewable energy, except for the wind season, which is there from the month of May to September, mid-September. We are able to provide most of the power through the green power. So the during those times, the economic dispatches or through the thing is it audible? Yes. So we are able to meet the green power. We are able to supply green power as a whole.
Yes, so when you provide the green tariff, so what will be the proof that the electricity that you're providing is from renewable energy? So what kind of proof will be there?
Okay, so so if you ask in terms of proof, Tamil Nadu is one among the state to have complete being in compliance with the RPOs. As you are aware, even the REC trading was not there for last 2 years, and it was recently initiated. So Tamil Nadu is one among the states that has completely met with the RPOs. That is the major proof you have.
A follow-up to the developers. So, so Mr. Sastry has said that he'll prefer a green tariff from utilities and move away from corporate PPA. So, isn't it a threat to C&I developers, or are there benefits of corporate PPAs over a green tariff?
Shartak, it is actually a win-win situation both for the utility, the developer, and also the consumers. For example, I'll put it in this way. Compared to most other states in Tamil Nadu, TANGEDCO, we have taken initiatives through the regulatory measures on towards the non-implementation of additional surcharges, which in most states they have given for the captive consumers. So this is one among the very good move that the state has come up in promoting these captive RE plants. So the complete additional surcharge has been waived off. So if you take almost per unit, it will cost around from 70 paise to 90 paise. It depends upon the category of RE fuel.
My last question to Mr. Nallasivan. So recently the Power Minister talked about promotion of offshore wind in Tamil Nadu, and he said that offshore wind, one option could also be that the offshore wind could be directly sold to the consumers, the C&I users. So, and then they'll provide REC certificates, which will be converted to carbon credits, and then it will be traded in the carbon market when it's implemented after the bill is amended. So what is your views on that? Can you please explain that, and what will be the tariffs expected from these offshore wind for the C&I users in Tamil Nadu?
Okay, so in terms of offshore wind, I will give my personal opinion. It might differ. My personal opinion is, in terms of going for offshore wind, we still have the projects to be scaled up in the onshore wind. We still have potential to more than 5,000 to 10,000 megawatts. So if we are able to scale up this, definitely we will be a great leader, and we will be able to meet the national target. And recently, studies is being done both in terms of with the ministry and here with the National Institute of Wind Energy. Offshore things are being there. Definitely, the cost would be much higher, because though we will be able to get power almost for 6 to 8 months coming from offshore wind, the tariff will definitely be above the national tariff of the average power purchase cost. It should be slightly higher.
Thank you, Mr. Nallasivan. I have last question for Mr. Pabba or Mr. Nandan. So you talked about the reduction in the limit, open access limit for this 200 kilowatt, which is a good incentive for you. So what about the net metering? So there's been amendment which now allows net metering till 500 kilowatts. So what are your views on that? Is it a good incentive for developers, or you want it to be changed?
Vinay, you want to take it up first?
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll come after you.
Okay.
You do a better job than me.
No, I think we're all together. I think our perspective is that there should not be any limit to the net metering kilowatts, right? And why it should be. Ultimately, all the consumers should get benefit out of it. And be it residential, light commercial, commercial, industrial. And as long as there is not a challenge at the substation or at the transformer level, and even though, and there are ways to mitigate that as well. And when the limits were not there, I think it really helped boosted up the industry. And at the end of the day, it also creates a lot of jobs in the country. And if you look at right from electricians, installers, manufacturers, right, everyone gets in the ecosystem. And there are savings which definitely end consumers have. So from our perspective, there should not be any limits on the net metering.
Yeah, just adding to that, see, I think this is again a very DISCOM kind of perspective. They have kind of a very adversarial relationship with this whole concept of net metering, and often that comes about because you view it in a very narrow context of a C&I customer with a net meter who is getting a benefit which the DISCOM is not willing to give to them. But rarely does the discussion go beyond that and goes to a stage where which is actually necessary, that you view solar rooftops across the country as a distributed energy resource which can supplement the grid, reduce T&D infrastructure, move generation to the consumer point, reduce your T&D losses. No value is put on all these positive aspects. The biggest of being that this is a distributed energy resource which is closer to the consumer loads and which can do a lot of good things to the grid. There's no value put on that. And unfortunately, the whole discussion narrows down to loss of revenue by the DISCOM on that pure differential tariff between what net metered tariff would give the customer and what he would otherwise have to pay. I think it's for the forum of regulators to build that construct to factor in all the values and benefits that a distributed resource like solar rooftops give to the grid, factor in that in, and then I'm sure that if that is done, then the benefits far outweigh the direct losses to the DISCOM in terms of the way they look at it currently. And that's absolutely necessary, and fully agree with Kushaagra on the reason why there should be no limits on net metering. But then it calls for a slightly more evolved debate than just the narrow debate that we have today.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarthak. I have like one very topical question before we move to sort of end remarks or audience questions. Maybe I'll start from Mr. Nandan first. Mr. Nandan, there's a lot of discussion around the clock sort of arrangements. So are you seeing any interest from consumers for RTC power?
I think it is moving. The discussions are moving in that regard. And ultimately, if you think from a larger context, solar is providing power during day hours. And there is already a grid infrastructure in place, which can be optimized further if we either have storage or wind, right, or any other form of renewable energy. So I think people are realizing the challenge is how do we solve it from not only from a regulatory perspective, but also from a technical perspective. So in a way, certain projects are moving ahead in that direction. But I think moving forward, this is going to play more broader role in enhancing the RE adoption further.
Great. Mr. Kumar, what about, he spoke about the technical challenges or the regulatory challenges. What about the economic, or the financial feasibility of RTC power at the moment? Is it feasible for corporates to actually go for this sort of arrangement in terms of tariffs? So
it's government is a very good risk mitigator. They never take any risk, and so is the case with DISCOMs. Asking renewable energy generation sources to meet RTC power is like asking an elephant to dance. Okay, it can dance. I mean, it looks like a dance, but it can never really be close to what a real dance is. We're trying to meet this requirement by hybridizing, like Kushaagra said. We are trying to get there, but I think this is basically a grid operator's job to ensure firm power to the customers, and at the same time making sure that it comes from an RE source. Now, if that is the challenge, probably the grid operator is better placed to contract directly with storage sources for the balancing component of the power that the grid requires, and then price it accordingly. So you can have like the SECI best tender, which talks about a pure battery storage supporting the grid in various services. That I think that's the right way to go. Instead of asking developers like us to hybridize, do wind in one place, solar in one place, contract with a PHP in one place, and then try to put all these three things to it's pretty complicated. It's not just technically complex, but also from a regulatory point of view, poses so many challenges which the current framework of rules and regulations really can't even imagine or envision. It's much easier for a grid operator to contract storage capacity, allow the storage capacity market to develop in India, and price it accordingly. It could be 9 rupees, 12 rupees, or whatever that number is. It's a small portion, and then when blended with solar and wind at disparate places, will still give you that blended power at a price that the customer can manage and can take. So I believe that the demand is there for RTC power from renewable sources, but the way we are trying to meet it probably is wrong. You don't ask developers to combine storage, wind, and solar. You ask them to do what they want. If I want to do solar, I should be allowed to do solar. If somebody wants to do wind, they should be allowed to do wind. But if the grid requires storage as a component, then ask for a separate storage tender to come out. That's probably the better way to go forward than pushing the burden on developers to mix all these three and then develop and give them a profile, RTC profile that the customer requires. That's how I would look at it.
Right. Mr. Nallasivan, I'll now move to you. Your stance as a utility on RTC power, how do you see that moving?
See, I personally, my experience is these RE power are intermittent in nature. So from the grid operator's perspective, only if we are in the hand, we will be really able to know much of the things. I understand from my fellow panelists on certain things, but the sudden, when there is a drop in sudden generation up to the scale of even 1000 megawatt during a huge big cloud cover or some of the severe cyclonic storms, there will be a tremendous amount of pressure at the grid operators level to procure the power and to supply during the absence of these RE power. See, recently even at the conferences, I was showing some live data from the state load dispatch centers. Yes, of course, we have come a long way, and yes, there are measures to be added. Like the fellow panelist was saying that yes, we have to. It should be a private-public partnership on the storage. The DISCOMs, we are all aware of this financial question because it will have its both electoral and the political challenges are there. So we have to meet out those also considering these policies of the government. We are looking forward on these challenges.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nallasivan. Mr. Sastry, I will now move to, sort of, we just have about 5-6 minutes left. So I'll ask a very different question from you. As a corporate power procurer, what sort of other initiatives do you have planned in the future?
Other initiatives in terms of power, yes, we are looking at new technologies. We are looking at storage to reduce our demand. It can be chill water storage, it can be hot water storage, it can be battery banks, power storage. These are some things that we are evaluating to at least get away from some of our electrical infrastructure like UPS and stuff like that. And DGs, for example, we want to get rid of the DGs if there is stable power available. Apart from these, some of the other innovative technologies like building integrated photovoltaics is something that has been in the discussions in many designs, but hasn't really been commercially viable as of now. So yeah, we are looking at projects, for example, carbon offset projects, which are based on renewable energy, solar assisted electric cook stoves is something that we are keenly evaluating, because looking at the penetration of LPG and the different government programs happening in rural areas, it will be it'll be difficult to find the carbon offset projects as well. Maybe 5 years down the line, 8 years down the line. So a more long-term assisted electric cook stove which can grid availability where they don't have LPG availability and so on. So these are some of the areas that we are looking at. Yeah, however, the goal of carbon neutrality has to be met year on year, and that's something that we have taken up at least until 2030. We will meet it. So we different avenues where we can increase our RE mix and get to a point where we are more sustainable in terms of the carbon neutrality and offsets.
Right. Thank you for that, Mr. Sastry. Mr. Nandan, I'll move to you. Your closing quick 1 minute or 2 minute comments, please.
Sure. Thank you. First of all, again, thank you for the invite. And I think I would like to just sum it up that there's a lot of turmoil, as Mr. Pabba said. But I think we are in a situation where, yes, we can do a lot of lessons learned from the past, but I think we have to also see what the future entails. But I think this is a situation where if we think about the next decade or two and then look back, okay, we have achieved so much. I think that we can only do when all the regulators, developers, off-takers, and find a common platform, right? And I think when the regulations have to support developers, and developers likewise have to support the end consumers. And at the end of the day, discoms also should feel a win-win situation. So a lot of work has to happen in this front. If that happens, then it opens up a multi-dimensional market, which not only will have solar, but storage and other forms of renewables. So, and as a country, I think we can do it. But the challenge is, do we have the will, right? And I think we all have a will, just that we have to entangle a lot of the issues which we all go through. But I think we are looking at a very bright future going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Nandan. Mr. Kumar, your closing thoughts.
Thanks, Kushbu. I think Kushaagra has put it, gives you a sense of the experience here in being the C&I sector and being a C&I customer today. It's an interesting time to be in this space. A lot of new things happening. And the cynicism of the past, I see less and less, at least among the discoms and the policymakers who are willing to give this a chance. And I believe we are on a journey where the sector, we are just boys now, we're on a journey to becoming men. And that's a healthy thing to look forward to. I remain optimistic, both from a customer point of view and from a developer point of view.
Thank you. Very optimistic point of view from Mr. Kumar. Mr. Nallasivan, finally, your last thoughts on the topic that we were discussing today.
See, generally, states like Tamil Nadu and the utilities, we are most welcome on the green power, provided we must have the intermittent plans wherein in terms of like how do we supply the peak power and what cost would it be. Like my fellow panelists pointed out, yes, it is a win-win situation for both the industries, discoms, but how do we treat different category consumers, the commercial and industrial consumers, the domestic consumers? So these issues has to be sorted out. Power being a concurrent subject, the states do take inputs from the ministry and from the head of the regulators. So it depends on the ground level situation also, like how states do we fare in this on the national agenda. Of course, we are open, and we are in promotion. So this it can be seen from the the monthly scalable projects, the monthly commission reports. For example, if you see this financial quarter, almost 478 megawatt of captive solar is being commissioned in Tamil Nadu. So definitely we are open up, and the policy is conducive, and we are into the promotion of more green open access power.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nallasivan. With that, we've come to an end of this discussion. There was a lot more to discuss, but we had a 1 hour slot scheduled, so we thought we'll end on time. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar, Mr. Nandan, Mr. Sastry, and Mr. Nallasivan for an exciting discussion. And I'm sure our audience got to learn a lot, and also form their own insights on whatever was discussed today. So thank you so much. Thank you also to our audience for sticking throughout the webinar. And we do hope to see you at our future roundtables on such interesting topics. Thank you.